Hi, and welcome to a Cognizant filmed webinar. My name is Michael Cook from Cognizant Centre for the Future of Work in EMEA, and today we're going to be discussing a new report that myself and my guest have co-authored, titled The Symbiosis of Human and Machine. We're going to be really looking and getting to grips with what AI means for the future of jobs, what it means for individual roles within jobs, and also what the future of work is going to look like and how our organizations are going to change accordingly. So discussing this with me today is Sean Heshmat, Cognizant's Head of Data Science and Machine Learning for EMEA. So Sean, welcome. Thanks very much for joining us.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for inviting me, Mike.
Great. So let's kick off and let's get to grips with the really hairy question in the room. What is the future of jobs going to look like in the face of artificial intelligence? Are we actually going to have jobs moving forward?
Oh, certainly, Mike. When somebody asks me this question, I think about an experience I had about 20 plus years ago. I was in a manufacturing site for a large confectionery company. I came into that site with some stereotype in terms of a very busy shop floor, slightly chaotic, etc. I was really struck 20 years ago how orderly or organized. There was not that many people actually on the shop floor because they were in the control room, they were bringing materials in, etc. Obviously, manufacturing has gone through a huge automation process and it's still extremely strong in many countries, Germany, China, Japan, US, etc. So I feel and I think that the way that manufacturing has gone, a lot of our sectors will also begin to look at the same experiments, i.e. how do we actually implement AI and intelligent automation in some of the service industries, for example. So the answer is no. I think jobs will be created, some jobs will be retooled, but overall, I don't think jobs will be lost because of this.
Absolutely, and it's one of those questions that you can understand why it's asked, because if you listen to the media and you read some of the reports that are out there, there's some really dystopian and terrifying stats. 47% of jobs could potentially disappear in 25 years. You read those and you could understandably be quite nervous. This is something that we grapple with quite extensively in the Centre for the Future of Work, and we've done a lot of research into this. We wrote a book a few years ago titled What to Do When Machines Do Everything, which came off the back of a very big study that we did. And we looked at the future of jobs and we calculated that we're actually going to see 13% net new job creation off the back of these digital technologies, one of which is AI. So there's actually going to be job creation. And I think if we just look at this as a real-world example, think about a social media marketing manager. Never heard of that role 5 years ago or 10 years ago, and now it's an absolutely crucial role in our marketing functions. But then actually, this very neatly brings me on to the next question. How are AI and humans going to work together? Does AI need the human element in roles?
Well, Mike, what we know is the following. We know that man and machine working together will produce a lot better output and be a lot more productive. So in the report, we mentioned a Harvard Business School study where you looked at pathologists and you look at detection of cancer in certain cells. Machines by themselves produce a set of results. Actually, humans produce the worst results. Machines do not produce the best results, they produce better results. However, the best results to really dramatically reduce the error rate is the combination of humans and machine. And we applied this in many of with our clients, and we're going to come to a couple of case studies that we see out there in the next section. But fundamentally, we think man and machine, or human and machine, will be working in in close collaboration, because every time we're able to look at a business process and look at actually what is good, what part of the process can be done best with a human mindset versus a machine ability. And I think we mentioned in the report this really interesting concept between the science of work and the art of work. Yeah. And the science of work is really all the transactional, the minutia calculation, which we can do as humans, but machine can do somewhat better. But what we're really good at is the creativity, is the collaboration, sure, is the ideation. So I feel that the future is really about that collaboration, and we're seeing more and more of that.
What I hear from you is that the future of work is actually very, very human. So often when I speak about my role, everybody assumes that I'm going to be speaking about the future of technology, as I am a futurist. But the reality is most of our research is actually centering around people these days. Yeah. Technology is an enabling factor, but it's not the future of work, really. It's really human. And that actually brings me on to the next point, is within the report, we lay out the Taskmaster Model. And that essentially looks at specific job roles and breaks those job roles down into individual tasks whereby you can identify which can be automated away. So how are we seeing this type of model playing out with your clients, but also examples that you've seen in the markets?
Absolutely, Mike. We're seeing a lot of examples. We do a lot of work with banks. One example that I'm going to mention more specifically is work that we're doing with a fairly large media conglomerate, where we are extremely good at deploying AI technologies to really cut down the cycle time and really have some very, very excellent differentiated outcomes. However, for that particular model, the business model that this client has, they need to have close to 100% accuracy. AI technology is amazing. However, we are able to get 90-91%. So one of the things that we started doing is to apply that model to the entire end-to-end business process for this particular client. And we found these activities, these tasks, that are actually can be done better with a machine and reduce the amount of time that humans can actually, for example, have to go through pages. So we got them to focus on what they need to look at. And the key decision that the human was making was a lot more in depth. They had to make various decisions, lots of rules about how you classify certain things. So what we're able to do with a human-machine collaboration is to reduce the time and improve the productivity, still meet the target KPI that this particular client had with their clients.
And of course, maintain the jobs within the roles within that task. So we also, in the report, we looked at Boeing and the way Boeing has used AI-enabled augmented reality within their wiring loom assembly practice. And through the collaboration of man and machine together within that task, they've reduced costs by 25%, and it happened almost overnight.
When you actually mention those examples, that also makes me think of examples. I know we've been doing a lot of work with a Danish utility company, where one of the things that we mentioned in the report about the blue task and the red task, and some of the red task is the task that requires some dexterity as a one-off. Dexterity. And this particular client, what we're able to do is to really deploy advanced AI technologies to create what an engineer has to do in a fairly confined space of an engine room, digitize the whole operations, and then have a curation of the steps that the engineer has to do in a very precise way to actually solve the problem. So it was, rather than the engineer look at hundreds of pages of manual trying to kind of go through it line by line until they found the problem, we were able to deploy deep learning algorithms to create what that engineer has to do. So that collaboration we're seeing more and more across different, whether it's in the white collar sector or still in the kind of engineering sector as well.
Absolutely. So the next question is really, how are organizations making this change happen? What structural changes do they need to make right now to really facilitate these new jobs and, of course, the new types of jobs that we see emerging?
Well, first of all, we're seeing a lot of our clients beginning to reimagine their business process. Obviously, business processes have been designed since the 80s, 90s, and only till recently. I think with the advent of AI and intelligent process automation, I think we're seeing a combination that really, I think, gives our clients a lot of opportunities to re-examine these businesses' process to see where can the combination of intelligent process automation and AI come in and improve certain steps in the process. But that involves rethinking the entire process. That really rethinking about why we're doing this in that way. Because if you're able to break down these processes into steps, you're able to actually have a much better understanding of where technology like AI can help. Now, the biggest change agent for me is going to have to be HR. HR will have to get their operations to really look at those and make sure that they are leveraging a lot of this AI capabilities, things like leave, accounting for leave, things like payroll, etc., and really look at supporting the leadership in terms of how to transform the roles of the organization so people are actually doing what they're good at and they're being rewarded for a better outcome.
That's such a good point as well. So we spoke about, we wrote a report a while ago called 21 Jobs of the Future, and one of the jobs that we theorized was a man and machine manager, which essentially does exactly what we've been speaking about now, breaking down tasks or roles into individual tasks and assigning man and machine together within certain tasks. So that's one aspect. But you mentioned HR, and HR I find fascinating because, yes, HR itself, as you say, is going to get smarter, going to become a lot more streamlined due to these technologies. But then something that we've spoken about for years now is HR needs to get more strategic. And we've been saying it, but it hasn't happened. So now it actually really needs to happen. We've got new roles, we've got changing roles, we've got new workers in the form of these robots, these AI algorithms. So that changes the entire dynamic. And we have 3 imperatives that we lay out in the report to make HR more strategic. Firstly, HR needs to be a cultural change agent first. They need to empower, incentivize employees effectively, and you mentioned this in your statement as well. But secondly, we need to understand our employees more than ever. We need to understand what skills they have, how they're collaborating, how they're working together, because that's critical if we need to redeploy them or reskill these certain employees. And then lastly, and almost most importantly in this whole equation, is learning and development. Continuous learning is no longer a nice to have, it's now absolutely essential. And as we have a greater impact of AI into our working world, it's going to change the way your task or your role works and the way my role works, and therefore we need to be coached on new methodologies to make that a reality. So, Sean, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and of course co-authoring the report with you. To everybody that's been listening, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor speaking to you today. And if you do have any questions, or if you'd like to dig into the report a little bit further, please feel free to get in contact either myself or Sean, or otherwise download the report directly off the microsite you've just landed on. Thank you very much.